After 100,000 miles, it looks like the tie rod ends on this vehicle have just about had it. The joint is loose and it feels wobbly when you move it from side to side. The boots on these things rip, the grease leaks out, and the metal joints wear away over time. The other side isn't as bad. There's a rip in the boot, but it hasn't split apart, and there's a little bit of firmness in the joint. Nonetheless, I'm replacing both as preventative maintenance. Here's how I did it. Start off by resting the car on jack stands and removing the wheels. If your car is rusted up a bit, you'll probably need some rust penetrant. Spray at these 2 points here. Then we'll loosen the jam nut just a little bit. Back it off by about a quarter turn or an eighth of a turn. It has to be loosened just a shade before you can remove the tie rod end. The jam nut we loosen, but this one we're going to remove. It's the nut that secures the tie rod end to the spindle. Now that the tie rod is free, we can twist off the tie rod end. Some guys count the number of turns, then with a new tie rod end, they'll screw it in the same number of turns. I'm going to use a different method, but one that works equally as well. If our new tie rod end is the same length as the old one, we should be able to screw it back to the lock nut without affecting the alignment. It all depends on the length. If the length of the old tie rod is the same as the new one, the alignment should be the same after our job is done. Now I'm taking back that quarter turn from the lock nut. It needs to be good and snug against the tie rod end. Then tighten the castle nut, the cotter pin, on the other side I backed off the lock nut, and now I'm removing the nut that holds the tie rod end to the spindle. I'll twist the tie rod end into place just as I did before on the other side. Turn until you butt up lightly against the lock nut. Now attach it to the spindle. Tighten the castle nut. The cotter pin, and tighten the lock nut snug against the tie rod end. I added Zerk fittings to the bottom and angled them to the side, so they'd be easy to get at with my grease gun. Pump the grease until the rubber boots start to bulge, then wipe away any excess grease. After you put the tires back on, all that's left to do is take the car for a test drive and see how it feels. Be prepared for the possibility of having to get a front end alignment.